Hello and welcome to my problem of practice defense presentation. My name is Nicholas DiDio, and I am a doctoral candidate in Baylor University's Learning and Organizational Change program. Professionally, I'm a district HR business partner for Walmart Corporation operating on Long Island, New York, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the sourcing, the scoping of work-life imbalance for HR professionals working in the United States specifically today. With that being said, the title of my research is Pioneering Productive and Paragon Places of Work, a Convergent Mixed Methods Approach to Demarcating Work-Life Imbalance Through Overextension Among Human Resources Professionals in the United States. In terms of my agenda, I will first cover the context of the research problem and the purpose. Then I'm going to discuss the relevant literature in the field, followed by introducing the two principal theories that guide my study, work-family border theory and Lewin's institutionalized equation of behavior. After that, I will discuss the methods I chose for the research to holistically answer my research questions. Then I will cover the quantitative results, the qualitative findings, and the mixed methods integration. We will then wrap up by discussing the several implications and the distribution processes for this work. So with that being said, the problem and purpose context for HR professionals. Regarding the research problem, imbalance between work and family domains have consequences for individuals and organizations. Overextended working hours have negative health outcomes, whether those outcomes result in anxiety or depression or job dissatisfaction. There are a myriad of different negative health outcomes associated with overextension. There's also a lack of federal protections relative to paid sick time in the USA, lack of laws setting maximum work weeks in the USA. The USA is also the only industrialized nation without annual leave or vacation time requirements. According to the International Labor Organization as well, the ILO, Americans are working more hours annually than any other developed nation. That's 137 more than Japanese workers, approximately 260 more than British workers annually, and 499 hours more on average annually worked than French workers. Additionally, for the problem, there's a lack of population specificity in the national data sets such as OCED and the BLS or Bureau of Labor Statistics. So with that, the purpose is to certify the importance of work-life balance in both professional and personal domains by exploring factors of burnout, work, and life among HR professionals. Ample work-life balance research also already exists in the field, like medicine, education, business. However, even though it's been a hot topic and a buzzword for the past 10 years, little to no widespread change is here. And finally, HR professionals are an underrepresented population of recent work-life balance hours research, and which is why, not only because it's my profession, I wanted to give a voice to these people. So for the review of the literature, with the problem and purpose established, we move to the review. As you can see, I've structured the review of literature argumentatively into antecedents, behaviors, and consequences, though consequences being both employee and employer, making the argument through the literature that if HR professionals are exhibiting these behaviors of overextended working hours, there has to be some reason for this, right? And there's two principal antecedents in this research that are HR streamlining and performance standards. HR is not a revenue center, but it's a cost center. And therefore, companies, when they face competitive pressures or they're looking to streamline their costs, they often do so by cutting such functions. The problem is when they do cut functions and streamline teams, performance standards usually don't change or they even increase. Then you have the employee level consequences such as well-being and compromised work-life balance, which inevitably will pervade and have implications for employer level consequences such as turnover, productivity, and absenteeism through burnout. Other aspects of the literature focus on defining work-life balance, both as a measure of equitable time spent at work and home, but also through inter-role conflict and role-based balance. Marks and McDermott, Greenhouse, Holter, among many other authors, speak on this internalized value system and conflicts of interest between work and family responsibilities. Brewster, another author, actually speaks on staff ratio, or what I call support ratio. And he found in his work back in 2006 that the staff ratio in 2006 ranged from one HR professional for every 18 employees, all the way from one HR professional all the way up to 2,000 employees, depending on the organization's size and structure. The literature also discusses burnout and organizational culture. And then Maslach and Leiter actually developed the Maslach burnout inventory and the areas of work-life scales, which I later used to measure work-life balance. Sue Gamble Clark's 2000 work-family border theory is the first theory that we're going to discuss when talking about the theoretical frameworks that shape this study. The theory states that work and family realms represent two distinct permeable domains that influence one another, and people are border crossers. They aim to attain balance through management and negotiation practices relative to work and family responsibilities. Work-family border theory actually emerged from the limitations of prior developed spillover theory and compensation theory. Spillover theory focuses mainly on emotional and behavioral congruence between work and family life, meaning that if I'm having an issue at work, it could spill over into my family, or vice versa. Compensation theory is pretty similar. That theory posits that individuals aim to compensate in one domain for what they lack in another domain. So if I am not happy in my work life or not happy in my personal life, I may throw myself into my work or completely ignore my work-related responsibilities if I'm disengaged. The second theory that guides this framework is Kurt Lewin's 1943 institutionalized equation of behavior. As you can see on the screen, he states that behavior is a function of people and their environment. And Kurt Lewin is actually known as the father of social psychology. His institutionalized equation says that changes in behavior can be seen from changes in people and changes in environment. So when we're talking about the context of this problem, the environmental considerations and criteria are changing within organizations all the time, especially amid downsizing. So if those environmental aspects are changing, then those behaviors are then going to change. Like the conceptual framework demarcates, the overextended working hours is the behavior, and that is brought on by the antecedents and the consequences, which shape those people and environmental factors that you see in this theoretical framework institutionalized equation. When it comes to my methods, I decided on a convergent mixed methods design for this research because I wanted to holistically answer my research questions. For my quantitative research question, I wanted to know, how do HR professionals' sense of work-life balance compare across different levels of hours worked, where the null hypothesis is that HR professionals' sense of work-life balance is not statistically significantly fluctuating across different levels of hours worked, and where the alternative hypothesis is that it is significantly fluctuating across different levels of hours worked. I ran a multivariate analysis of variance and MANOVA on 49 United States-based HR professionals, constituting 9 factors for work-life balance. Again, I'm using the 3 subscales from the Maslach burnout inventory and the 6 subscales of the areas of work-life survey. And I grouped the participants by average weekly working hours, a group for 40 and under, a group for 41 and through 50, and a group for 51 plus average weekly hours, and I wanted to see how the means differ. MBI factors were exhaustion, cynicism, and professional efficacy, and the AWS factors are workload, control, reward, community, fairness, and values in organizational context. Simultaneously, in alignment with the diagram system, I conducted 4 semi-structured interviews, and my qualitative research question was, how does work-life spillover affect well-being? So if areas of my work life are pervading my personal life, how is it affecting my well-being and my sense of work-life balance? Finally, I integrated the findings in my mixed methods section, where I was concerned about how the qualitative interview themes either reflected or diverged from the quantitative results. And I utilized the quan plus qual notation system that you see here. In terms of quantitative reliability for these 2 instruments, as you can see on the screen, each of the subscale factors of the instrument published reliability is placed alongside my Cronbach alpha for my research. In most cases, the reliability for my research was higher, indicating more internal consistency. Some subscales, however, were lower, but all yielded acceptable results to move on. Also, most of the 9 assumptions that are required when testing MANOVA were met. The ones that were not noted and did not meet were still kept to keep the model because of the holistic idea of classifying work-life balance through burnout. A one-way MANOVA for the quantitative results established that there was a statistically significant difference between the three groups of average weekly working hours among HR professionals 40 and under, 41 to 50, and 51 plus on the combined dependent variables constituting the Maslach burnout inventory and the areas of work-life subscales. That is F 246, 2.034 with a p-value of 0.017. Notice that p-value is statistically significant under 0.05 with a Wilks-Lambda MANOVA statistic of 0.455 and a large effect size and squared of 0.325, indicating practical significance. Wilks-Lambda is the test statistic that measures how well each function separates cases into groups. The F statistic is the obtained value ratio after scaling by degrees of freedom, that is both hypothesis and error degrees of freedom. And the P represents the probability of obtaining that F statistic if the null hypothesis is correct and the effect size is large, indicating that practical significance, like I said. A Tukey post hoc test is a single-step comparison procedure that allows the researcher to find means of a factor that are significantly different from each other, comparing possible means. This post hoc test revealed areas, particularly the AWS subscale for workload, demonstrated a statistically significant difference when comparing those grouped in working hour categories 40 and under to the 41 to 50 group, with a mean difference of 5.13 at 95% confidence between the interval of 2.3 and 7.96. And 40 and under to the 51 plus group, 7.77 mean difference, 95% confidence from 4.26 to 11.30 for average working hours. Not surprisingly, the burnout exhaustion subscale increased as the hours of work increased. This means denoting that the higher the means progressively in each of the three groups was reflective of the burnout measure. Based on these results, evidence was sufficient to reject the null hypothesis and conclude that HR professionals' sense of work-life balance as measured by AWS workload significantly differed on the number of average hours worked per week. This makes sense. When we're talking about measuring work-life balance through hours worked, it makes sense that the workload subscale would be statistically significant. In terms of the qualitative findings, I had 6 major themes, 21 thematic codes, 21 thematic categories, 28 codes, and 10 thematic statements. The major themes were under-leverage HR team size, the defining and maintaining of work-life balance, defining, sourcing, preventing burnout, overextension, work-life spillover, and the consequences of that work-life balance, all reflected in that conceptual framework in the beginning of the antecedents to the behavior and the consequences of the behavior on employee and employer levels. For the mixed methods integration, when we integrate the findings and results, you can see the convergence. The quantitative evidence is supplemented and validated in the qualitative quotes described from the interviews. So for example, 81.5% of my sample indicated working more than 40 hours per week. And this is reflected in the quotes from the participant when they define work-life balance as honestly, it's about the hours, meaning I don't want to be working after 6 p.m. I also don't want to be working after 6 p.m. And at their last employer, they thought to themselves, how many Saturdays did they work? How many 6-day working weeks did they work? They did this like it was nothing. This was the lived experience of many HR professionals today in the United States amid small team sizes, downsizing, and performance standards antecedents, which brings us to the next piece. My study found that on average, there was 1 HR professional for every 583 employees. As you can see, this is also supplemented in the qualitative evidence. There were various implications for the research. For organizational leaders, organizational structure reviews should be conducted. And when I say organizational structure reviews, I'm talking about the reporting structure, the size of the HR team compared to the size of the organization and its people goals. Of course, that also entails policy, working conditions, practices, along with the consequences from the conceptual framework of absenteeism, productivity, and turnover. For medical and political leaders, there's policy and legal regulation opportunities. I know in 2022, I've been recently seeing that some companies have been pivoting to 4-day work weeks, recognizing that many people are putting in their 40 hours before Friday morning, if you work that typical Monday to Friday schedule. Moreover, there's implications for OSHA standards, CDC guidelines on occupational stress, well-being, and health, both on the physical and the mental level of classifications. And then finally, the distribution tactic. The target audience for this research is organizational leaders and policymakers, along with HR researchers and practitioners and consultants. I plan to submit this research and these findings to the Journal of Human Resources and the Journal of Organizational Behavior, utilize and scaffold its findings in consulting projects, and conduct my own organizational structure reviews. And then finally, here are the materials that I'll use as the executive summary, brochures, slide decks, professional development workshop materials. I thank you all for your attention today and for a wonderful graduate school experience at Baylor University. I am so grateful for the faculty, the staff, the people who have partnered on this and made this research possible, my family, my friends, my colleagues. It has been an incredible experience at Baylor University. I can't say enough good about the program. Thank you again so much for your attention and tuning in.